Hi, everybody, and welcome to the special focus meeting of 100 meeting of Overeaters Anonymous. Today is February the 4th, 2026, and I'm absolutely delighted to have one of our service team speak today. It is the lovely Charlotte O. Charlotte O came to OA in April 2012, and she's from Cambridge in the UK, and I'm going to hand it over to her now to share her experience, strengths, and hope. Take it away, Charlotte.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for having me. And thanks everybody doing service to make this meeting happen. Um, I used to come to this meeting because I really liked it. And my special focus was on the Tuesday meeting with relapse, which I will come to shortly, because that is my history. Um, but then I started doing the maths and I kind of thought, well, I'm not a 100 pounder. And then I started looking into the maths and turns out I am. So I qualify in here as well. But as Rita said, this is, it's a special focus, but everybody is welcome. I certainly felt welcome here when I didn't realize I was a 100 pounder, but there you go. Um, and if there's any newcomers here, you are particularly welcome because you're why we're here to get this message out to the people that are still suffering and hopefully to give you hope that there is hope, that things can change. If it could happen for me, then I promise you it can happen for you because I was a hopeless case. So I'm going to share some numbers because they might mean something to some people, and I've had to do some hard maths this morning. So my top weight was more than 19 stone, 120 kilos, 265 pounds. It was definitely more than that because I gave up getting on the scales. I don't know. I might have been 5, 10 kilos more than that. I really don't know. I just haven't, I have no reference point, but that is the last time, the last time I weighed myself when I'd given up all hope. I'm now down to 80 kilos, 176 pounds, 12 and a half stone, which means that I've currently lost 6.5 stone, 40 kilos, 90 pounds. But I am still working towards my healthy body weight. I've definitely got another 10 pounds or so under the jeans. So I definitely am around that 100 pounder. Um, I only weighed myself the other day just so I could do that maths. I don't tend to weigh myself very much, just because I know that I'm still working towards a healthy body weight. I still have to keep on giving my clothes away, which is really nice. And I've had to deal with my rings twice now. I've had to take some gold out of these rings, which slightly irritates me that I'm losing weight around my fingers and my ankles and things like that. But anyway, weight's weight, right? And I don't actually say I lost it anymore because there's a fellow shared at Birmingham that really, really made me laugh. I say I've surrendered it because I know exactly where to find that weight. I know exactly where all of that is if I want to go and get it back. So I haven't lost it. It's been released. It's been surrendered by the grace of my higher power. Um, I've got some photos as well, which I'll share in a bit. Um, just to kind of, in fact, let me just do that now. Because again, I use this as a little bit of an excuse to go and find some stuff and do some stuff that I hadn't done. So here are some photos. I hope you can see those. Um, so yeah, this in my beautiful bridesmaid's dress when I think I was about 20. It was my sister's. Maybe I was slightly older. My sister's wedding. The other bridesmaids looked great in that dress. I didn't so much. And this one, I think I might have been pregnant. I've got 4 kids, so there's lots of photos of me pregnant. But as we can all see, that is not baby weight. That's just weight. I mean, there might have been a baby underneath it, but all of those layers are not baby weight. And then this, I did look at this and think, oh, I was pregnant there, but then turns out that that little boy there was the one that I thought I was pregnant with. So he's quite clearly out. So, and then, yeah, this one, obviously me caught in the act. Enjoying some sort of pudding in that bowl. These have only survived because I've recently, unfortunately, had to clear out a house of my husband's mum, and she found some of these photos were hidden in her place. They wouldn't have survived if they'd been in my house because I hate looking at them. But now I don't. I don't hate looking at them because I have embraced my journey a lot more, I think. So these are some more recent photos of me. I took this one in the jumpsuit to send to a friend to say, can I wear a jumpsuit? Am I allowed? Is it too young? Do I look like somebody that should be presenting a children's program? So maybe. And then, yeah, and then me doing something active and what I love to do, which is walking up hills. And that's somewhere in Cornwall, and me pondering, I think, the next the next corner. But basically, that's kind of the freedom of my life now, of the fact that I can move and I can, yeah, move around. So yeah, that's all a bit side by side. So I'm going to stop sharing if I can find the button there. Um, I think the reason I wanted to, I'm pleased that some of those photos survived actually, is because it's obviously not about just about the weight. It is about the look in my eyes, the just the despair and the deadness behind my eyes. And I have a very blessed, happy life. Well, I've got a difficult father, but whatever. I grew up in a very loved household. Get on with my sister. I've got a lovely husband who somehow loves me despite all the stuff I've done. I've got children. I have held down a job that people tell me I'm good at and pay me for, and all of that. Um, but I couldn't stop eating. And I remember going to counselling when I was pregnant with my second child, who is now 24 or something. And they said, why are you here? And I listed all those blessed things that I have in my life, but I just couldn't stop. I just could not stop. And for decades, I would wake up every morning and, go for a wee and just do a big despairing breath of, I cannot believe that what I did again yesterday, and today's going to be different. And yesterday, I just binged and I ate way too much and I can't control it. And I went to bed and I didn't sleep very well because I was probably thirsty and full of, what crap, basically. Never mind, actually, probably just very hard to breathe and all of that stuff. Um, but today was going to be different. Today I was going to pull myself together and I was going to do something different. And of course, I couldn't. I couldn't get to tea time. I certainly couldn't get, sometimes I couldn't even get to, through the first hour or the first half hour before it was going in. And it is an absolute compulsion. There was nothing, and I had all this scare stories from doctors, I knew that I was much more at risk of lots and lots of things, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to stop, um, because I am a compulsive overeater and I always have been. And, looking back when I first started telling my sister about some of this stuff, like I say, 10, 12 years ago, when I first started realizing that other people felt like this and there was somewhere that I could go to get some help. Um, and I was sort of talking about, I remember getting smacked legs as a child, and she wasn't condoning it in any way. Please don't take this the wrong way, but she said, "Oh, you did go on about stuff though," and I was like, "I know 100% sure that the stuff I would have been going on about would have been food." And she said, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "Because there's nothing else I cared about. There was nothing else that I would act out on. I wouldn't care where we were going. I wouldn't, but what would have happened? It would have been something like, we'll go to the museum and then we'll get the fill in the blank when we leave. And we'd have been delayed at the museum, say, and would have come out and the fill in the blank shop would have been closed. And I would have lost it because that was the promise. That was what I'd been thinking about all afternoon, or morning or whatever it is. So yeah, I did go on about stuff and it would have been it would have absolutely been food. And family joke of like my sister always remembers everything that people wore at different family occasions, whereas I can remember what everybody ate because I was jealous that they'd chosen those things and I hadn't. So yeah, despair. And there was a time when I would get on a train absolutely breathless just by walking up the platform. I would have got a taxi to the station because, the idea of going on a tube, as in going up and down all those steps and standing on a tube and just would be too frightening. And I would have got a cab and I would have, yeah, walked up the platform and I'd have been out of breath and sweaty and got on it. And that's not the case anymore. That is not the case. So yeah, it is a miracle. So yeah, came in April 2012. I faffed around for a bit. I then got a sponsor. And then I did get some sort of I did get abstinent, I did get freedom as I knew it at the time, freedom that I'd never had. But looking back, it was not the freedom that I've got now because I didn't do the program like I do it now. So I couldn't have got the gifts and the joy from it because I wasn't doing everything I needed to do. So what I did was I worked the steps, but I always sponsored, but I didn't do 10 and 11s. So essentially I was always doing a 10-step fellowship program, which was never going to work because it's written down that it's 12 steps. So if I picked and choose and I didn't do my 10 and my 11s, I was never going to get well. And the build-up of human emotion was always going to kick in, always. So the first time I made it to about 8 months, and then, you know, I threw it away by not doing the things that I should have done, or I was instructed. Well, I wasn't instructed to do them because, at the time it was only face-to-face meetings and there wasn't that much recovery in my meetings. So, I'm not sure anybody knew that, but we all did the best we could. Then, I did the steps again, then whatever. Then I, had 3 months, then I had 6 months. And I've kind of gone back through some of the history just for my own, curiosity, really. But again, I don't know. I don't know, you know. But what I do know is that I never made it past 8 months. 8 months seemed to be the kind of magic thing. And I think that was, you know, as we're told in the big book, that is the buildup of human emotions, that unless I keep my side of the street clean, unless I do my inventories, unless I look at my part in things, it's going to come and get me. And I didn't have a chance. I didn't have a chance to recover fully. I also didn't put down everything I needed to put down. I put down my big ticket items. I knew what they were, but there was just a lot of stuff around the edges that I was still having that actually was still triggering me, and I didn't know that. And it was only when I put them down this time round that I realise now, looking back, that I was still being triggered probably twice a week, and yeah, again, I didn't stand any chance really. And then finally, the thing that I didn't do was really, really get into that relationship with my higher power. I did, and I did explore it, as in it again, it was progress. It was more than I'd ever had because I was definitely, I was raised an atheist. Well, yeah, raised, as in just really horrible, cynical, why would you go to church? Like, why would people go to church? Just really, really horrible and really destructive. So therefore, I was I sort of started off with worse than nothing because I actually started off with, cynicism, and the whole word just made me shiver really. Um, but again, when I came in, I knew there was nothing else. There was nothing else I could try. I'd tried everything. There was nothing else left. So I had to have the humility to listen to that word and see whether I could find something out of it. So I did. And in the early days, I, had far more than I ever had, but I still only really went to it when, when things happened or something would happen, and then I'd go, oh yeah, damn, yeah, that higher power thing. So I think I would probably go days without thinking about my higher power, actually, looking back, which again was never going to set me up. All of these things that I didn't do were making me fall over every time, every time. So yeah, so I kind of bumbled along for many years, in and out. I was never out of OA, but in and out of abstinence, um, in and out of sponsoring, because I'd obviously have to, when I relapsed, I'd have to tell my sponsees, obviously. So then they'd all have to go off and find other sponsors and stuff. Um, and then yeah, there was just a period of time, kind of for a few years, like I say, I was looking back at the history where I I looked through my chat to an old sponsor, and I'd already made amends, but then I really had to make amends because I looked through the chat and oh my God, I was the worst sponsor ever. Because it's like, yeah, no, I'm gonna do it. No, I'm gonna do no, like I feel great today, and yeah, I'm gonna go to a meeting. And then 6 weeks later, it's like, yeah, I'm back in the food. It's like surprise, because you're not doing anything. Of course, you're back in the food. And she was just brilliant, and is still brilliant, and she was brilliant and kind and loving to me. But she, yeah, I mean, I look back at that chat and it just makes me squirm a little bit. But anyway, I have made that amend. So yeah, there was a couple of years I was sort of not doing anything really, and I think I might have. scrape together a few weeks absence here, a few weeks for absence there. But basically, I was then deep in a relapse. So this is now 2.5, well, a bit more than 2.5 years ago now. It was early May of 23. Is that right? Yeah, 23. Um, and I was traveling with work and I'd managed to sort of hold it together. Um, and then I was in an airport and I just didn't. And I remember just going and buying all this crap and just standing there waiting for the taxi, just shoveling it in, shoveling it in. And then, I had a meal and I acted like a lady at the meal, but, I shared something with somebody else. And then the next morning when nobody was looking at the breakfast bar, I was like, and oh God, the shame and the despair. And I think it was then that I just looked at myself in this very posh restaurant, in wherever I was, Sao Paulo, I think I was. Um, and what am I doing? What am I doing? And I just can't go on anymore. And I think that was, thank God, the gift of desperation. It was just the gift that I needed where I absolutely knew I was done. I just had nothing left. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't go around it again. I just couldn't. Although that's what I asked to do because I didn't know what else to do. So I went to a meeting. I came back a few days later, went to a meeting, asked the first person that said that they would sponsor me. I didn't ask for any qualification. I didn't care about it. Basically, I figured if they were sponsoring, then they were in recovery. I didn't ask whether we had a similar journey. I didn't ask whether, she liked the colour blue. I don't know. I don't know what it is that I needed to qualify for. I basically just asked her if she'd sponsor me, and she said yes. So, and she asked me to do some things that I'd never done before, which to start off with was plan my food. Ta-da! So, work out in the morning what you're going to have and stick to it and take photos of it. So, surrender my food, give it over to my higher power, ask my sponsor to be my living witness, and that's what I did. And the first day she asked me to do that, I was traveling with work again the next day. And I said, I don't even know where I'm going to be. And she said, well, figure it out. You're a grown up. Take something with you. Find a shop, And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right. And, we ended up going out, but I knew where I was going. And so I could look at the menu and, commit to something that worked for me, that was, within my food plan. And I did that. And I have done that every day since the 9th of May, nearly 3 years ago. I hate it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, a busy morning, the last thing I want to do, and I always forget I have to do it. Well, not always. Five out of seven, I reckon. It's a busy morning. Then I go, right, I'm going to have my breakfast. But before I have my breakfast, I need to work out what I'm having for me dinner. And then I have to go, who's in tonight? Who needs a lift to wherever, what are we having, and all of that sort of stuff. But what that means is, obviously, I never then have to stand in front of the fridge and go, oh, what do I fancy? Because there is no what do I fancy. It's just, no. Now, of course, there is flexibility in that. If something, if it's gone off or somebody's eaten something or, I don't know, whatever, then I'll substitute one thing for another, but I'm not going to go, oh, I couldn't possibly eat what I planned and actually I've got to have this instead. It's flexibility, but within guidelines. So what that gives me is an intense sense of freedom. And, it is one of those, you know, the I can never remember the name, the word, I can't think of the word, but basically one of the things that doesn't make any sense is that the more guidance I've done around my food plan, the freer I am. And the more that those guardrails are there, the freer I am because I just don't have to think about it. I just don't have to think about it. And that is just amazing and liberating and yeah, just brilliant. So that's the first thing I did. Then the next thing that I then did was I worked the steps. And I mean, I worked them. And I did loads of exercises to get in touch with my higher power. And I just started building that conscious contact, and like it says, reading out the steps. Thank you, Amanda, is, as the result of these steps, that's it. That's the result of having had a spiritual awakening. And I can say that I have had that now, and and people will, in my real life world in work, they'll talk about how calm I am, and sometimes they say the word serene, and I'm like, yeah, it's not me though. It's, it's a gift, and it's not me because I was crazy. Well, I still am a little bit crazy, but but my high power protects me from that. So that is, and I've still got a long, long way to go. I don't know where the end point is. I don't think there is an end point, but I'm certainly not ascending off into the great beyond yet, because I forget and I get agitated and I get lost, and then I realize that actually if I just hand it over, if I just surrender, if I just ask for my higher powers help. And I think, about a year into recovery, it suddenly occurred to me that I could take my higher power to work with me. And I started asking them to come to work. And I send them ahead to meetings sometimes. And I sometimes put in a pre-meeting with my meeting to have a little chat to my higher power because I know that, a meeting may be tricky. There was one when I realized that there was a client that people would call tricky. She's not on this call. Tricky Nancy, they would call her. And she was quite tricky. And I realized that I could pray about it. So I did. And I turned up to a call, and there should have been about 12 people on it. And it was just me and Nancy. It was the bizarrest thing. Well, it wasn't, it was a God job. And it was just her and I. And I could reassure her that it was my job to basically make her look good in a nice way. And that I was there to support her. And and she basically then shared, surprise, surprise, that she was quite worried about this thing that we were doing. And she opened up, then I could open up. And then, funnily enough, from then on, she wasn't tricky anymore. And in fact, she was a delight to work with. And she really appreciated, and again, a few people kind of said to me, "Oh, I don't know how you did that." And I was like, well, I do. And I sometimes share it with people, but sometimes I don't in my other life because it's just a bit, it's a bit too much and a bit too weird to say it was my higher power. But sometimes I do. Sometimes I say, that it's not me, it's a gift. So yeah, once I figured out I could take it to work with me, and now I definitely take it to airports with me because, as I've shared many times, by doing regular step tens, it turns out that I used to be a right dick every time I went through an airport. I would get cross at whatever line they would put me in because it would be the slowest line. And I don't think it ever came out on my face. It might have done, but it certainly never came out in language. I was never unpleasant. But in my head, I was like, well, my queue's moving a lot faster than everybody else's queue. And oh my God, that family in front, it's like their first time they've ever been to the airport, and etc., etc., etc. And I was just horrible, just absolutely horrible. And I didn't even need to be rushing through to get to my binge foods because I wasn't binging at that point. But anyway, I only figured that out by doing my regular step 10s. So, I can take it, I can take my higher power, and I do when I'm going to an airport. I make sure that I stop outside and I make sure that my higher power's got their arm around me and can protect me from being horrible and I can release all my well, not all. I can let my character defects, or I can ask for my character defects to be gone. So yeah, so I did that, and then I I get so boring. And I know people have heard me before because I just bang on about steps 10 and 11 because that's what I never did before. So I do my daily step 10s. I am on the step 10 train and I love it. Again, it annoys me because it comes out of nowhere, and then I go, oh my God, I've got my call, and but it's discipline. It's a discipline, and it's something that I have committed to do, and I do it, and it keeps me clean. It keeps my side of the street clean. It also helps me to manage my character defects because sometimes my partners aren't perfect, sometimes I'm not perfect, and that's okay, and that's acceptance. So I do that, and then I do my written step 11 inventory every night, sometimes in the morning if I'm really tired, but mainly at night. And I follow the questions in the big book. And again, that just keeps me straight. I was having a little bit of a voicemail chat, backwards and forwards with a fellow in OA the other day. And they're in Alcoholics Anonymous as well, which I'm not, and I have no experience of this, but they were sharing that their experience is that with our disease, because it's there all the time, we have to keep really front and center. We have to be doing these things, like all day, not all day. We have to be doing them daily because we've got to go and have another meal again in a couple of hours or, however long it is. Whereas they were saying that some of their fellows, including them in Alcoholics Anonymous, can let some of those things drag on a little bit longer because they don't have to face it. Now, like I say, I've got no experience of that and I don't know whether it's true and I wouldn't like to say, but I found that really interesting that, we've got to do those things 3 times a day. So, we've got to keep ourselves clean and we can do that through the steps. I also sponsor and I love sponsoring. Again, it's sometimes tricky. But I've learnt loads. Partly how to put good boundaries in place, partly how to feel the red flags sort of earlier on in the relationship. So, I've learnt loads. I've sponsored lots of different types of people, which has been, I've recently been brave enough to sponsor people that suffer with anorexia because that's not something I've ever experienced. But I was asked by 2 people, and my sponsor sort of reassured me that I may not be able to spot, you know, I can spot mad behavior because I've done similar things, messing with my food. So she reassured me that I maybe should give it a try. And I was very honest with these 2 people that, I had no experience of it, but it seems to be, well, it is working out great because one of them is now sponsoring herself, which is amazing. I love that. I love that whole kind of connection, that I'm a sponsy grandma and my sponsor's a great grandma and and all of that, that kind of tether back to the grandfathers or whatever it is, etc., etc. So I love that. So yeah, I sponsor and I do service where I can. Again, it's trying to keep myself in the middle of that lifeboat or just trying to, surround myself with people that are working the program as well, keeping me, again, straight, keeping me on the straight and narrow. And I think also it just gives me something to do. It gets me out of my own way whilst my higher power does some stuff for me, as in, can start to fix me and heal me and take my character defects. And it kind of, helps me to keep my hands busy so that I don't interfere too much with that and let my higher power do their job and give me all these miraculous gifts. Um, I've really rambled and I didn't have any plan. I thought about making a plan and then I thought, no, I'm just going to open my mouth and hope. And I prayed that hope that something came out that made some sense to somebody. And yeah, I suppose I'll just spend a couple of minutes just talking about the life I have now, which is, well, I hope you can hear it in my voice. It is full of hope and joy. And I used to come on meetings and I used to hear people talk about their recovery. And I think to start with, I don't think I believed them. I used to think, well, I'm not sure. They'd talk about food neutrality. And I used to think, it's not a thing. I don't know, I don't believe you. Or then I think I moved to, well, I do believe you, but your disease probably wasn't as bad as mine then because you're not as bad, you're not as mad as me. Like you're one of those helpful people that goes, oh, I want to say half a whatever it was. It's like, yeah, whatever. Like I think I probably thought that. And then I moved to actually, I'm starting to believe these people and they're sharing their photos and they're sharing their numbers. And I see them week in, week out, month in, month out on these meetings and they're doing stuff, and I think I really started to listen, like they say when you start reading the big book with where are the similarities rather than where are the differences. And I think I started to believe them. And then I think I moved into, well, that's great that they've got it, but I'll never have it. But I do. I have absolute food neutrality. I made my husband a birthday thing yesterday. I made it. I had to get my son to taste whether I'd got the balance right between the coffee flavour or not, because I ain't tasting it, obviously. He was delighted to taste it for me, by the way, on his dad's behalf. And it's, I can make it, I can wash it up, I can have it in the house. I don't care. And it's not, oh, aren't I brilliant to do that such special thing for my husband? It's not that. I just do not care. And there's stuff left over from, the festive season in those cupboards out there. I'm just not interested. I don't even know what's in there because I'm not interested. They're just not mine. just as irrelevant, they are completely irrelevant. And I checked into a hotel room last week. I was in a hotel room for 5 days, and it was only on the fifth day I was on a meeting, and I sort of looked over, and there was, the tray of all the tempting things that you're supposed to spend, a huge amount of money on in your hotel room. There's 10 times more expensive than it is in the shop. And I looked at it and thought, I don't think I even noticed that. I literally don't think I even noticed it. And it's as irrelevant to me as the ironing board, which I don't know whether there was one in the in the room either. There might have been, and a hairdryer because I've got really short hair. I don't need a hairdryer either. Um, and that is an absolute miracle because there was a time when I would have come into a hotel room with my backpack on and my suitcase with my coat on, desperate for a wee, and I'd have to have been shoving stuff in my mouth, and probably whilst I was having a wee. It's just disgusting. But, there was a time in my life that was the reality that I lived, but it's not anymore. And there is hope, and it really, really, really does work. And, it's a wonderful thing. And I really do think I'm heading into the realm of I am grateful. I'm hugely grateful for the gifts I've been given. I mean, I think I'm moving into the I'm grateful that I'm a compulsive overeater, because if I wasn't, how would I have ever developed a relationship with my higher power? How would I have ever met any of you guys? And I just wouldn't have had that joy and that serenity and that peace in my life, because why why would I have ever picked this up if I didn't, if I didn't need to? So I think I'm I think I'm getting there, that I'm grateful that I had those things as well. So that's it. So thanks ever so much for having me. And yes, there is hope. That's all I can say. Thank you.